Talking about motivation, investments, and emotions are not just related to languages. As the SMART technique Vinicius taught us tonight, talking about motivation, investment, and emotions is important for the whole life, for all of the aspects of life. So before starting up, I'd like to get more participation because I pretty much like this interaction. And I'd like to ask you, what do you think motivation is? What is motivation for you? Well, let's keep on. I've brought here some bookish definitions for motivation, so that might help us to learn new words and also learn more about motivation. So, the first thing is motivation is something that explains why the people decides to do something, how much they will dedicate themselves to this activity, and how long they will be willing to carry it out. So motivation is what makes us feeling like to carry out different activities. That might be learning a second or third language, that might be learning mathematics or anything else we do in life. As Juarez said, motivation is like this fluid, is like the gas for life, is this fuel for life. There's a second definition is that motivation is determined by instincts and it's the basic human function. Vinicius pretty much said about this instinctive part of language, and it is strictly related to the motivation. Many of our motivations are unconscious, and some of them are repressed. This theories like these ideas of unconscious motivation and repressed motivations we can see in Freud, like the psychologist in the first half of the 20th century. There's a third definition for motivation, that the motivation is the central motivation force is the tendency towards self-realization. So we are only motivated when we feel we are like complete. We are self-realized as a person. We have become the best self of ourselves. That is the desire to achieve personal growth and to fully develop the skills and talents that are our heritage. So to be motivated, if you work in a place where you don't have opportunity to show up, to come up with ideas, or if you are not free and autonomous to choose the materials and the methods for doing the job, for doing the work, probably you're not going to be motivated. A fourth definition for motivation is the instrumental motivation. This instrumental motivation, it's an idea that motivation has a function. We need to be motivated to do something. That might be learning a language or anything else. And this instrumental motivation refers to learning to accomplish a task, such as passing a course, achieving a better salary. There's also the idea of integrative motivation that refers to the attitude, to the target, like language and speaking communities. You could be motivated by doing different things. I myself feel motivated when I'm studying more than one language at a time, like French, Spanish, English, some Portuguese as well. Today morning, I attended to a meeting for Portuguese for foreigners, and I pretty much love this idea. Um, there's another definition for motivation is that it is the way in which the individual's conscious attitudes, feelings, beliefs, interpretations of events influence this behavior. that is how mental processes are transformed into actions. For example, beforehand, someone asked, Ijani asked, how can I not understand native speakers? Uh, Probably this is like, as Vinicius said, this there probably there's a mental process in there that prevents you from or avoid understanding native speakers. So you are not motivated to do so. And this idea that sometimes we have mental processes um, comes from a cognitive approach in the 90s. So this cognitive approach in the 90s, it's really relevant. And most of the school objectives, like the school goals in teaching something, focus more on this cognitive approach, on these cognitive goals. But we know probably there are more teachers in here look into this. We have like emotional goals. We have psychomotricity goals. We have not just this cognitive uh, approach when we learn something. So this idea in the 90s probably is something that we have overcome already, not completely, but some part of this we have overcome. And the last possible definition to motivation is that it is a complex, a multidimensional construct that categorizes whether the motivational influence is internal or external. Sometimes we don't feel motivated to do something, but when we have a friend or someone by our side by telling us, go ahead, you can do it. Yes, your pronunciation is getting better, your grammar is getting better, you are building up something really cool. When we have this external motivation, we tend to continue on to carry on doing what we are doing. But there might be an balance between those two motivations, the internal, the inner motivation, and the external motivation. If you have any questions throughout this presentation, you can interrupt me at any time, okay? By ask questions or make comments, no problem. So the first step when we study motivation, it's the first studies about motivation started in the late 50s, like 50s and 60s. That's what we call the period of social psychological. This social psychological period is really important when we study motivation. So we have some outstanding authors that probably you guys might already heard about. Howard Gardner, Lambert, and all of these authors that not just wrote about intelligence, but also about motivation. A second period in history is the cognitive situational period. So in this period in the 90s, motivation is more dynamic. There's a more dynamic view of motivation, and motivation changes due to the influence of rewards. So sometimes school is really behaviorist. Sometimes we don't get the rewards we deserve in a job or at school. So we put so much value and importance on these rewards that sometimes we get we don't get motivated by the process itself, by the idea of learning something, but we get motivated by the idea of getting the reward. It's something that happens to me when I ask my students, or that might be Brazilian students or any other students from Pakistan and any other country, why you are learning English. What is your motivation for learning English? And most of them say, I'm learning this language because I want to get a better job. So getting a better job seems to be like a reward for speaking the language. And That's not how it works. For sure, speaking English is really important for the market, for business, but this sounds to me a reward and not actually the what it's gonna make you feel motivated. Yeah, we need to get the right motivations. Ijani on Facebook is saying we need the motivation to do everything. Yes. Um, we for example, I'm gonna do the dishes after I have dinner, but I need to be motivated to be washing the dishes. But can I say I'm gonna do the dishes after I have dinner because I want to get a better job? That's the same that's the same excuse for doing something. Of course, if I do the dishes frequently and if I do it really good, I could be a dishwasher in a restaurant. But that's the cause and consequence. It's not truly related. That's
Yeah.
what you meant, Vinicius. Sometimes we have um, we want a consequence, but we don't have the causes before it. We need to enjoy what we are doing. That might be learning something or doing something like the errands we have to do in our day. Um, we take shower daily uh, because we feel motivated to do so. We go to school or we go to work or we wake up in the morning because we feel motivated to do something. If you are depressed or um, if you have some psychological trouble, you are not getting this motivation. That's one of the ideas from the late 90s. Yes, that motivation is something really that comes from the thoughts, the beliefs, and also the interpretation of events. That interpretation might be conscious or unconscious. Sometimes don't feel motivated for learning English because they had classes in the past at school or at language institute, but sometimes they blame the teachers for not teaching. They say that the teacher was stuck on to be verbs, but can it be true? Yes, that might be true somehow. But I think sometimes we get stuck in a wrong interpretation of the events. Um, we see things in a distorted way, that it's not the truth. Just like you said about Ijani's comment in relation to the native speaker understanding. Sometimes we don't understand the native because we don't want to. Like we don't have the mindset, as you said. We think in the Portuguese mindset, and we cannot switch to the other mindset, what the other person is meaning. Uh, Also, motivation is based on attitudinal factors, on our attitudes, and also it's influenced by interest, relevance, the smart thing that Vinicius taught us. The R stands for relevant. So the relevance of something we learn tends to make us feel more motivated. If you do something really relevant, not just for yourself, but for other people. I believe in this idea that you get more motivated when you work with other people, when you get collaborations. This these influences how you organize your learning, and also motivation can relate to micro levels and micro and micro levels of motivation. I like this idea of breaking things into pieces as well. As you said, for the specific goals, as um, when you can be more specific to something, when you can break things into micro levels, uh, you can perform much better. If I say, oh, I feel motivated for learning English. Wow, this is a huge goal. This is not the right goal, yes.
Yeah,
You
maybe.
might be motivated for, but are you motivated for learning present perfect? Are you motivated for learning pronunciation, the TH sound? When we get these break into pieces or these micro levels of motivation, we can know how much we can invest on this. That has a stricter relation to the attainability that you said, the A part of smart, um, and also the time bound. Sometimes we put much time on doing something that it's not relevant or that's not specific, that's not measurable. So when we can invest our resources, not just time or we invest money on learning something as well, not just time. We pay for the technology we use, we pay for books, we also pay for uh, teachers and courses and going to universities and uh, paying schools and also the commuting, the buses and trains and the mobility itself for doing things. So this idea of investing, it's what is investment for all of you? Yes, Jory said about the investment. Sometimes we think about investment in terms of stock market, in terms of assets and profits. Uh, for example, your Spanish, you noticed you have a profit in your Spanish because an Argentinian guy and a Venezuelan guy said, "Oh, you have a good Spanish. How did you get it?" He pointed out a profit, but sometimes we cannot track how we got this profit. Yes, how long time did you invest in learning Spanish? Because sometimes it is so natural for us for to read something online, to participating in some events, or to sometimes we feel that we are not investing on something, but we are really investing on something. And I like this idea of Bonnie Norton. She said that unlike motivation, the concept of investment points precisely to the socially and historically constructed relationships between people. So when the person asked you, "How did you learn Spanish?" I think you should said, "I've learned Spanish from you, Argentinian people, from you, Venezuelan people, or our neighbors." Yeah, because we have a political relationship with those countries. Sometimes we don't have it clear how the investments of time, money, and products and assets, whatever, are done in our daily lives. Sometimes people can't see how much American or British people or English speakers invest in Brazil or invest in Brazilians. And we also invest
Yeah.
time, money in buying Hollywood movies, in buying music from them. This trade thing, this investing thing happens all the time, sometimes unconsciously. I think that the money represents the value of money represents the value of the life itself, because the time, let's say time, what's the point of being a billionaire when you are 30 if you die at 35? This idea that the working poor, we just work when we have debts. That's a point. We only get a job when we have debts to pay, when we don't have money. So in a sense, we pay for working because we have to invest a lot in mobility, uh, skills for performing the job, and all of those things. So in a way, I advocate for a universal wage. We should receive a salary or receive money for being alive, for being here, because as long as we are here, we can invest this in things, in doing things, in producing things. I like this idea of I probably I won't translate it correctly, but it comes from French. The idea of work pollen, like a bee, the insect, goes to flowers to pollinize, to transfer the pollen from one flower to another. This is one of their works. But another work, the work that really gives money, not to the bees, but for for us human, is when they produce honey. But they don't spend so much time on making the honey. They spend more time on making the transfer of pollen from one plant to the other. And we don't give so much value on that second work, the second job they have. So sometimes we spend a lot of time um, on something that gives money, some money, because we have to pay bills, because we have to raise kids, because we need to buy clothes to be presentable to the society. And not actually, we don't spend so much time on doing the second work of going to one flower to the other and making the work, you know. This idea of cultural capital. Yes, when you were a kid and you had this childhood, the tough childhood, you say, even though this was culturally rich, even though you probably didn't have the money to afford this or that, it was culturally rich. And one of the ideas that the theorists say, and they argue, is that some forms of cultural capital have a greater exchange value than others. So if we could if our students ask us, should I learn Spanish or English? Go for English, because this nowadays this cultural capital, this language. Well, the right questions are actually, Juarez, are not how can I be approved, or how can I fit in, or how can I not make mistakes. But I think the questions we should pose to ourselves are, how can I not feel bad when I'm not approved? How can I not feel terrible when I make a communication mistake? Because when we pose these questions, we start to find ways of feeling better when we make a mistake, because we will make the mistakes. We will be rejected. People will say we are ridiculous on this investment. And actually the job is not the return they expect. I don't expect to have a job when I learn something. But by having a job, I also expect to have returns, like a symbolic and material resources in this return. So when someone tells me, I want to learn English to get a job, when I feel this motivation, I go further and ask, oh, so with this job, you could go to different places and know different countries. With this job, you could buy an apartment, or with this job. So we can go deeper on this motivation and not be on the surface of it. Well, so let's to wrap up. Let's talk a little bit about the last word in the topic, because I said uh, we were gonna talk about the motivation, investment, and emotions or feelings. Sometimes we don't have a good feeling when we learn something. That's because we don't have the return we expected. I like this definition that emotions are dynamic, uh, and all of our emotions tends to have a development. They develop other actions. So when we take an action on doing something and we have a return, we invest time, we feel motivated, we have a return. Depending on this return, this profit, we will continue on doing this action or not continue on doing this action. And the most important aspect we consider for continuing something is are the emotions. When we feel happy about something, we tend to continue on doing something. That's what Ijadi said in the comment on Facebook. We all have necessities to drink water, to eat, but we are more motivated to do something when we feel happier. Yes, that's the truth. When we track all of these positive emotions, happiness, love, uh, caring, we tend to continue on doing something. That's why I don't think learning something should be a fight, should be a battlefield. We don't need to be in this place of pain. That other um, proverb, no pain, no gain. I don't believe in that. If that might work for the gym thing, but not for other stuff. I believe when we have the positive emotions, we tend to be more open on continuing doing something. And one of the emotions and feelings that we tend to find more often in a learning set, in a classroom, for example, is the shyness. This feeling it's quite of complicated. The embarrassment or lack of self-esteem when learning something. I pretty much liked what Vinicius said about think about yourself as a kid and you are learning English. If all the time when the kid gets in trouble, you change into Portuguese, the kid is not going to learn how to be tough, how to develop self esteem in the language. And when we are learning something, we create a vision. This vision also is a term used in the marketing, yes? But when you have a marketing plan on opening a business, starting a business, we have a vision. We make some projections. And according to these projections, as Vinicius also said about the psychological thing, the projection, when we make the projections and we don't feel happy, loved, instead of feeling these good feelings, we feel shy, embarrassed. We are not going to invest our money and time. So that's why when well, let's come to the business part. If you have a school or if you are a teacher, we need to care about how the feelings. It's not all psychological stuff. It's not learning matter. The matter is not solid. So yeah, the matter it's some theorists might say it is liquid or it it fades away. So the matter it's something we need to teach the subject, the contents, but beyond the contents, there are feelings, emotions, and all of those things going under our skins. So let me pose a question to you. Have you ever felt shy when speaking in public or taking some responsibility or embarrassed? And how could you go to this place of feeling shy to a more self esteemed place? That leads us to a second feeling that it's very problematic when we are learning something, which is the anxiety. Anxious students take more time to learn vocabulary and have a harder time for remembering so because they spend so much time on itching themselves and and not being still and calm on doing things, I put myself on my way. Yes, that's what we call self sabotage. We sabotage ourselves all the time, and that's something we should stop from doing it if we want to do something different. Yeah, to do something good. Why it's so difficult to say our minds? That's
Yeah.
because sometimes we don't know how to read the feelings and we cannot put it down to words. Yeah, I have a last question for all of you. That's the one. When we started learning this language, we had a vision of how we would be, how we would become after learning it. And what was your vision? What did you expected to be when you spoke this language? What was your previous self before learning English? And I'd like to share my vision as well with you. The oldest memories I have with English language, it was when I was like 4 to 5 years old with the cartoons, like Disney cartoons and all the television things. And at that time, my vision was like when I was 6, 7, 8 years old. Oh, I pretty much loved watching to Carmen San Diego, a detective that would to travel to different places. In the morning, she woke up in Paris. In the afternoon, she was in St. Petersburg. And at night, she was in New York. And I was fascinated with this traveling thing with the languages. So one of the visions I had when I started learning English was this traveling thing. I I do like to become a traveler. But when I get to the high school, I noticed, wow, this language is not just for traveling, um, and it's very expensive traveling as well because we learn the how much we must invest on these things. And then at high school, I was like watching my English teachers, and I said, well, I don't want to become an English teacher. I'd like to be like a business person, a businessman, or also be a musician or something like that. As Juarez said, about his fascination with music. I also was fascinated. And when I got to college, um, I was like, I cannot be traveling all the time because I have to do the laundry and I have to we need to set things. We need to settle down some things in our lives. I'm not into business as well. So becoming an English teacher was one of my visions when I was at college. But of course, in the last 10 years, I had good and bad experiences seeking this vision or going through these paths. And it's really nice sharing with you, all of you these visions, experiences, and motivations because we can not learn just language from each other, but also learn the mental things that Vinicius said that goes on in our mind when we think about interacting in this language. So just to have a final remarks, um, it doesn't matter if you feel dismotivated or if you don't have time or money to invest, as much as you can do an effort or a step at a time, I'm sure you can get to your goals, to your specific or your measurable goals, or you can attain to your objectives. I pretty much I listen a lot to people saying that they want to learn English, but the I think a question is, do you want to learn English every day, or do you want to learn English throughout your day, during all your day, as when you want to learn English? This is one of the most important questions when it comes down to learning. When also investment and feelings.